Once the goals have been identified for the digital marketing campaign, the next phase is to look at the audience and who exactly are we focusing on. Um, so as we can see, it's the second step in the analysis phase. So we're going to move on to a couple of questions about your audience before we get going. First of all, why do we need to know who our audience are? Surely to God, isn't it a worldwide medium? Isn't it global? Isn't it, can't it reach everybody and anybody? Well, I suppose it can, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't focus on who's important to us. Um, we're not trying to reach everybody on the web and who has access to social media. We're trying to figure out exactly who would be interested in our product and try to focus on those people specifically. And by doing so, we'll create a far more effective campaign than if we use a scattergun approach to it. So just a quick question here before we get going. The factors that driving repeat visits. So, if I ask any of you, why do you revisit the same website or use the same social media channels or whatever the case might be, you got to ask yourself the question of why do you use it? So I'm going to pause, or it'd be good if you pause the video right now and jot down a few ideas. What brings you back to the same website or to the same channel? Why do you keep going back? Are there reasons for it? Because this is very important for us to figure out. If we know these things, well, then we can act upon it. And if we know what brings our customer back to us, we can act upon it. Like quite often, if the catch-all answer to the simple question is, why do customers keep coming back? The answer is because we give them what they want. But if we don't know what they want, it's very difficult to produce or provide them with it. Okay, so that's the question I'm asking. So it'd be good now if you did pause the video for a few minutes, get out a piece of paper, jot down why you go back to the same websites or why you go back to the same social media channels. So I'm going to pause it here and then you have a think about that. Okay, so whether you paused it or not, I'm going to keep moving. Okay, so the next thing here would be to answer this particular question. And, I'm just going to pop up this information here and you're going to see it here. It's fairly obvious in a lot of cases, okay? But what's very interesting here is the first four items are very, very high up in percentage here, and then they drop off and the rest are all quite low, in around a 10-12% mark in and around here, okay? But content. So people go back to the one website or the one social media channel because it gives them the content that they want. User friendly. They find it easy to use. They find it easy to find things on it. Speed and regular updates. So it's up to date, it's fast, it's user friendly, and provides them with the content they want. It's fairly obvious stuff here, okay? But just keep in mind here, have we ever used a website or a social media channel that wasn't one of these or two of these, and we had to use it because we were stuck to it? To be quite honest, I remember once upon a time I was on Vodafone and I needed to use their website to top up, etc. And it was just atrocious. But because I was tied into a contract for a year or two, I had to use it. And it stuck in my mind as being awful. But that's neither here nor there. We still have to use it, okay? Quite often when we used to talk about, I'm going to talk about TU Dublin, and I'm going to talk about DIT's website. For years, students used to say, my God, is there everything on the website? Yes, there is, but we can't find it. And sometimes when we do find it, we find it very difficult to find it the second time or the third time because it's not conducive for that kind of thing. And it isn't very, optimized. It isn't very, very simple. So to be quite honest, these are very, very important things, okay? Then we move down along here. Some offer incentives and loyalty. The brand itself, we go there, innovation, games, we buy from them, customize, chat, and other, okay? So a lot of these ones dropping off down here, along here. But the reason I'm pointing these out right now is factors driving repeat visits. Why do people keep coming back? They keep coming back because we offer these things. Now, I'm going to turn around and say that if we don't know who our customer is, it's very difficult for us to offer them the content that they want at the level they want. We've all gone to websites and gone to blogs and gone to different digital channels where, you know, the actual content and the way the language used is either above our heads or below us, okay? With regards to, it's too basic for what we're looking for, or it's just too highfalutin, okay? We've all gone to places that it isn't very user friendly, okay? And my view on user friendly is sometimes we you know, user friendliness is not user friendliness across the board. Some people will understand things a lot easier than other people in different ways and shapes and forms, okay? Download speed. If we don't know their speed, we don't know what they're capable of, it's very hard to know whether we're offering a good speed or not. There is a thin line between offering good quality, high quality content with lots of media being used, and then download speed as well. Regular updates, okay? To update content is very, very expensive if you're doing it on a regular, very, very regular basis. If we know that our customers are looking for new content every 15 minutes, well, then it's up to us to provide it every 15 minutes. But if they're only looking for new content every day or every 2 days or every week, well, then, you know, it's cheaper for us to provide it at those intervals, okay? So across the board here, it's very important for us to understand who our customer is. And we can't actually decide on any of these without knowing properly who our customer is. So the more we know about our customer, the better, okay? The next question is, what do we want to know? Okay, so we want to know everything about our customer. Is that necessary? Not really. So it's about us understanding what's important for us to know and then focusing on trying to get as much information about that as possible. Okay, so there's different areas of what's important to a customer. There's different things we need to know. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is every audience is comprised of several interconnecting elements. Okay, so we're going to start having a look at these elements. Okay, we must try to understand as much about these as possible. Okay, first of all, analysis. All right, who are they? How many will there be? And this is very important. If we underestimate this, how many there will be, our systems just simply won't be able to cope. It's as simple as that. And therefore, if our systems can't cope, and if our whether it's a website or whether it's a channel is constantly crashing because it's not able to handle the load, well, then that's a major, major problem. Who are they? All right, in as much detail as possible, figuring out, you know, different things about them, understanding them. Okay, what is their knowledge of the subject? That's very important because, as I mentioned earlier on, if we're actually delivering a message and it's at the wrong level, it's sometimes as bad as not delivering the right message at all. Okay, so it's very important for us to understand, to not speak down to them, not speak up to them, speak at the right level. So to understand exactly what they're looking for, in what kind of detail and in what kind of language. And we're not just talking about whether it's French or Spanish or German. We're also talking about the way that they speak, okay? So it's very, very important to figure out these things, which ties very nicely into the next one. Demographics, okay? So to know as much about them as possible, to know generally, are we talking about groups of teenagers here? Are we talking about people in their 60s? Are we talking about, you know, people in their 30s? Very, very different wants, needs, very different language, very different, you know, every message really. So it's very, very important for us to understand this. So as much as we can about their age, their marital status in certain cases, because if they are married, it might have a different effect on the decision-making process. If they have families, if their families are young, if their families are teenagers, their families are growing up, it might be a very different prospect. It might be a very different conversation. So it's very, very important for us to know these, okay? Their lifestyles, their geography, all of these things are very, very important, okay? Their background, their education, okay? All of them are very, very important for us to know. Now, sometimes it's very difficult for us to know everything, you know, even down to their income and their profession, but as much as we possibly can on these kind of things would really help us to create the right message for them. This one here is a particularly interesting one. What are their hobbies and interests? Okay, if we know that, we can group them, and if we know them that properly, we might be able to market to them. We might know a little bit more about them, and we might be able to have a very detailed conversation with them and be able to engage them in the way that needs be, and hopefully convert them in the way that needs be. Their environment, okay, this comes into things like their location, their culture, their language, all of these different things. So, that will have an effect again on the message that we give, and even on things like, their if we're giving them telephone numbers, what they're going to be, where their local offices are, what currency are we going to be talking about? Are there certain laws in certain areas that might have to be taken into consideration if we're trying to sell to a particular region? Maybe we don't have a license to sell to that region. Maybe we haven't got negotiations in place, okay? What are their wants and their needs, okay? This is slightly different than their interests, but along the same lines. If we understand this, we're on a winner. If we know what they want, it's far easier for us to give it to them than if we don't know what they want. Customization. What specifics do we need to know to address? For starters, we all know one size doesn't fit all. So if we're talking about customization, are we breaking it down into demographics? And if we're customizing it per demographics, are we talking about right down the line into personalization? So the whole idea of knowing that you are John Smith, therefore, you like this and you like that, and you come from here, and this is your background, this is what you work at, this is your, these are your interests. Are we talking about that? At the beginning, we're not. We're talking about, what I'm talking about here is trying to first of all find out, if they fall into clusters, if they fall into profiles. That's what we're trying to talk about here, first of all. And obviously, if you get that and you're working down that route, well, then you can go for personalization if you want to. But at this stage, we are talking about customization. We're talking about maybe choosing 3 or 4 different personas or profiles and working with those. And then their expectation. What you want to say, what they're interested in hearing. Okay, so it's about understanding the difference between perception and reality, and quite often there is a difference between perception and reality. Sometimes that's quite a large difference, so it's very important for us to try to find out exactly what it is we're dealing with when it comes to their expectations of what they want from us. At what level? Are we talking about a product? Are we talking about savings? What are we talking about? Okay, their expectations are very, very important to us. Now, here's a little diagram that I quite like. Now, I just want to put a little caveat out before I produce this or present this. I'm not really interested in there's very small text in this. I'm not really interested in this. What I am interested in is a very simple overview here. In the kind of a green color here, we have the actual customer and their understanding, okay? What the actual customer feels about something. And then in the mustardy yellowy color, we have the marketer's perception of the customer's incentives. Okay, so one is what the actual customer wants, and the other one is what the marketer thinks the customer wants. So I just want to show you this one here, this diagram here. Yes, there is an overlap, and quite a large overlap, but then there's quite a lot that doesn't fall under this. So sometimes the actual marketer thinks they know what the customer wants. The more we know about what the customer wants, the better. Okay. Actual customer usage versus marketer's perception of customer usage. So with the idea here of LinkedIn, a lot less customers are using it than marketers perceive. The same with Twitter. The same with a lot of these different things here. Okay. Facebook deals, it's the other way around. So it depends on what we're looking at, but it's very important that quite often the marketer's view is different than the customer's view. Okay, what the marketer thinks the customer wants is different than what the actual customer wants. Now, this is, I like this last little bit of a stat here, because 76% of marketers feel that they know what their customer wants. Only 34% of them ask them. Let that hang there for a second. Okay, 76% feel they know what their customer wants, but only 34% have asked them. Now, the web is And all the digital channels we're talking about are so two-way orientated, so feedback orientated. We can gather so much information from our customers if we want to. It's all out there. It's just a case of compiling it and figuring out exactly what they do want. So it's not always a case of knowing what they want. Sometimes, in fact, quite often, a good conversation happens when there's two people listening and two people talking. Okay? In this case here, what we have is the marketers listening some of the time, but they're talking most of the time. Really, it's about listening, understanding, and providing the customer what they want. So that's why it's so important for us to figure out what it is our customer wants, to listen to them, to understand them, and to try and provide a message that we can serve them correctly. Okay, so that brings us down quite often in this section when we're talking about the audience analysis. It's probably one of the only sections in the actual marketing campaign, the actual plan itself, that I'll be expecting people to reference. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to say you can't reference other parts, but it's the only part that I really will be expecting you to reference, because you'll be doing some secondary research. Some people will conduct primary research on this, but you'll be definitely doing some secondary research on who your audience are. And what you'll do is you'll start like a lit review. You start broad, and you'll work towards like a funnel towards a point. Okay, and at the bottom of that point, hopefully you'll be able to put together some profiles and personas. So you'll start to understand, oh yeah, this is my customer, this is what they're trying to, and this is who they look like. Okay, so really what we're talking about is we're creating user profiles. So I'll give you a couple of examples of these, and then I'll show you what ground control have used. Okay, so profiles are very important. They will help us to formulate and put a face on our audience, and therefore hopefully to be able to provide the correct message to them when we need to. Okay, so profiles, what we have here is, just say this is our audience here and they're grouped into 3 groups here. What we're trying to do is put together a profile for each of them. Okay, so we're talking about small businesses. Owner Ali, he's a small business owner and he has certain attributes here. He needs something easy to use and wants his life to be easier. Okay, so he's not looking for something hugely customizable and hugely strategic. All right. Marketing Mary has 100 to 2,000 employees. Again, looking for something a little bit more strategic in what she's looking for here, and probably willing to spend a little bit more money on it as well. And then finally, we have over here Enterprise Aaron, who is talking about a far bigger company, is looking for something which, is hugely customizable and wants everything to fit their needs rather than straight out of the box. Okay, so these are the different types of things we're looking at here, and you've got to think about, when you're thinking about your profiles, you've got to think about going back to your aims and objectives and your goals that you've set in the previous stage in your idea, making sure that the audience, that you're reaching out to the right audience and you're looking at what's important for them from your goals. Okay, so you've got that in mind. Okay, so all of these, I'm not trying to say you need to have 3 profiles. You can have many profiles. Okay, and especially if you're talking about something in tourism, you could be talking about something which is, one group might be just single travelers, another one might be couples, another one might be family units, and so on. Okay, so you could be talking about or a business person. So and sometimes the one person could fit into all these categories depending on their different needs and their different trips. So keep that in mind. Now, it says designing a presentation without an audience in mind is like writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. Okay, so it's not going to be hugely effective unless we have a focus on who we're trying to provide it to. So that's why it's important for us to figure out who our audience are and what we need to know about them. Okay, trying to break it all the way right down into an audience profile at the end. Okay, so here's Ground Control's example and what they've done with this. Okay, so just looking at this again, I'm not going to go down through this with a fine-tooth comb, but I am going to look at the whole idea here. I'm just going to jump through it Again, all of these are already up on the website and up on Dropbox, and you can download them if you want. And I again advise you to do so. But what they've got is they've got the international markets. You'll see here there's quite a few references, and because of the area they're dealing with, a lot of the references are from Falch Ireland, looking at the audience, where they're coming from, what they're doing, and so on. Okay, and again, this was written in 2015, so obviously the references are fairly up to date back in 2015. Okay, but they go from everywhere from an international market. The North American Canadian market is very strong for them, right through to Australia down here. You can also see Byrne here is actually the manager of ground control, so they actually conducted some primary research with this person, and so you'll see that name popping up quite a bit, because this information is coming from primary research, which is an interview, and Australia and so on. Okay, and then right down to the domestic market and the Irish market and the client there. Okay, so you can see how that one's worked out. Now, what are they missing? Well, at the end, they're missing bringing the whole lot together into user profiles. So while the research is good and the building block is good, and they're just picturing the flow again of their funnel, they are getting closer to what they're looking at. You've always got to think is, what this information I'm putting together about my audience, how does it apply to my business, to my concept, to my aims, and so on. Okay, so keep that in mind. And at the end, what you need to do is provide user profiles. So unfortunately, ground control don't really do that part of it, but they do the first part quite well of the audience analysis, but the actual profiles are just completely ignored. But you'll see some of the other 4 groups that I've given you assignments for, some of those do that quite well. So it's worth visiting those and seeing what they've done as well. So that's what we're looking at, trying to do with your audience analysis. Try to figure out what kind of an audience you have, who are they, right down to the audience profile. So I have a picture going forward when I started creating content in the next section and the section after that. What face am I putting on these people? What kind of message am I giving them? Am I delivering the right message at the right time in the right way through the right channel to these people? Because if I don't understand who they are, I won't know which channels they use. And if I don't know which channels they use, I might be using the complete wrong tools to try to deliver my message to them. Never mind, my message might be completely wrong as well. So it's very important that we understand our audience.